The number one thing that we learned to screen for decently early on, maybe like 25% through our hiring blast, was if you filter first for motivation, that actually makes everything else much, much easier.
Welcome to Partner Path, a podcast that unpacks the venture capital and growth equity ecosystem from a junior perspective. Young entrepreneurs and investors have already had a massive impact on the industry, having started unicorns and launched billion-dollar funds. We discuss these success stories and more by sharing perspectives and advice from some of the industry's most prominent role models. This podcast expresses our views as of the date published and does not represent the views of and is not endorsed by any company for which we work. Before we get to the episode, Laura and I are excited to announce a partnership with ElevenLabs. Fresh out of Y Combinator's summer batch, ElevenLabs is an AI-driven app that uses large language models to curate the best moments from podcast episodes. Imagine having a smart assistant who reads through every podcast transcript, finds the best parts or parts most relevant to your search, and strings them together to form a new, curated stream of content. That is what ElevenLabs does. I personally use ElevenLabs to explore content on future podcast guests and highly recommend it as another diligence tool for investors. Check out ElevenLabs on the App Store today.
Today we're joined by Jordan Dearsley, founder and CEO of Vapi, a leading voice AI company empowering developers to build innovative applications. With millions of calls processed daily and hundreds of thousands building on the platform, Vapi is already making a significant impact. Welcome, Jordan.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. Is this also on video as well?
Yes. So
Cool.
Our YouTube presence has been growing,
Nice.
which we should make you aware of.
Cool.
Let's go back to Waterloo. We've had some amazing founders come on from Waterloo, and Chelsea and I are seeing more CEOs pitch us lately from university. So we'd love to hear, what is it about the Waterloo culture and what sparked you to build a company?
So there's probably two reasons why Waterloo founders are really, really good. No, maybe three. One, the school's really hard to get into, especially for engineering. In Canada, it's like the cream of the crop or whatever you want to call it. People come from all over. It's like our MIT. The other reason is they have this really great co-op program that's kind of unparalleled. Yeah. So you spend like 4 months working, 4 months in school, 4 months working, and you could just keep doing that back and forth for about like the whole 5-year program. And so by the time I dropped out in my third year, I already had like 2 years of work experience, which a lot of people don't. And the third reason is it's a depressing place to be. Not depressing, but it's not a fun school, right? It's like a work school. You're there to grind, and everyone there is also there to grind. It's kind of similar to SF versus like New York, maybe. Like people in SF are here to grind. They're not here to have fun. And because of that, obviously, more innovation happens.
But I think grinding can look different. For example, some folks consider grinding investment banking and private equity.
Yeah,
but it
totally.
seems Waterloo is grinding in the sense that we're trying to build something and put something in customer hands.
I mean, but also, there is like definitely a whole entrepreneurial movement, but there's a huge like grind to get FANG and grind to like get this internship and that. And it's like it feels like competitive amongst your peers too. Like, oh shit, that guy got Google, like it's kind of a big deal. In my year, it was called Cali or Bust was the name of the meme at the time. So the ones who got to Cali made it, and the ones who did not make it by the definition. But I always wanted to go to California. And actually for COVID, I actually did lock in an internship, and then COVID unfortunately made it rescind. And so I didn't make it. But I found my own way. So.
I was going to say, that's a great transition into going to Cali, or I don't think we're allowed to say Cali, but going to San Francisco, and joining YC almost 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
So maybe just touch on what was the original idea, why YC?
We pivoted throughout probably like 12 times or 20 times or something like that. When we originally applied to YC, I was in my third year of school. I had my friend Nikhil. We were working on this like school project. And I was like, hey, dude, like, there's not a chance we're going to get into YC. He's like, 100% we're getting into YC if we just try. I'm like, okay, fuck it, whatever. So I recorded the little video because I can do the whole camera thing. And we ended up getting an interview. And we originally applied with a platform for professors to send lectures to their students. So it was like totally out there. And then by the time we interviewed, it was like robo-advisor platform for people to buy baskets of stocks. By the time we got in, it like became something else, and then we kind of like pivoted 14 more times after that during the batch, and eventually we landed on a button to join meetings really quickly. I know it sounds very simple, but it was enough to raise our 2.1 seed because people would click this button before their meetings around like 10 times a day. And so it was a very small pain point, but it was a pain point that had 90% retention. And we obviously had a story for how we were going to become the productivity platform for everybody. And, we're able to sell that vision enough to raise.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, congrats on that.
It was actually very, very easy to raise. We were about maybe 2K at the time. And we turned on our paywall and somehow people paid us money. And then from there, over the next maybe 3 years following, we evolved the platform. We tried to make it into like an AI note taker when ChatGPT came out. We were able to grow that to about maybe $500,000 in revenue. And then eventually we were like, what are we doing with our lives working on calendar apps? We could be doing a lot more. And this was all out of Toronto in the time. So it was kind of a more like lifestyle business at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another good transition. We talked about kind of the original idea was super powered. Now we're 3 years ahead and we're talking about Vapi.
Yeah.
So help us understand what motivated you to pivot again into voice infrastructure.
I had a conversation with Michael Seibel one night. It was like July 2023, probably, about 2 years ago now. And I was sitting in Toronto. I was on Zoom with my two other co-founders at the time. And Michael was like, what are you doing with your lives? You have no idea who you're building for. You have no idea. You come to me with the same questions every time. Why? Why do you do this? And we're like, actually, I have no fucking clue. And he's like, what you need to do is move to SF. It doesn't matter where you move, but if you're going to move somewhere, move to SF, start from zero, just hit reset, be away from your friends and family, and just see what happens. And so within 2 weeks, we ended up moving to SF like our entire lives. And I like left a lot of people behind just to focus on like grinding in SF. And so we were in an Airbnb for around 3 months. And during that time, me and Nikhil would be up late at night, like watching Macintosh videos, trying to be like, oh, like how did Steve Jobs like pull it off? How did he change the world? And then we would go to like food banks, trying to like find problems to solve. And it got weird for a little bit. Nikhil almost ran off and joined a crypto like clan in Africa that was trying to build like decentralized currency to do commerce. Anyways, during that time, I ended up building an AI therapist to go on walks with every day. I kind of looked around at these models and I was like, okay, well, transcription is getting faster, LLMs are getting faster, text-to-speech is getting faster. Maybe like if I project 18 months out, like it'll be fast enough to talk. Maybe right now it's fast enough. So I started noodling. And I made this AI therapist named Harmon, and I hooked it up to a Twilio phone number. And I was like, okay, let's see if anyone wants to talk to this. So I would go up to random people on the street. I'd be like, hey, here's a phone number, talk to it. What do you think? And then like, of course they talked to it and then dropped off. I would go on the bus and I would airdrop like my contact card of this AI therapist to people trying to get them to try it. Eventually we found one guy who used it 12 times a day, but he used it for like kind of like thinking buddy or something. It was odd, but we knew that we were onto something, basically taking LLMs and making them available in the voice domain. Because at the time, this was pre-ChatGPT voice and all that. I don't know when it happened, but I kind of asked around at some other startups, and these other startups were like, we're finding this thing that you solved really, really hard. Can you just make this available as an API? And so we did, and it started with like one customer from the YC batch.
That's awesome. The things we always ask founders is what gave you the conviction or what were the kind of signals for you to drive you to like your next idea. It sounds like for you was almost, you were exploring ideas, but you've had a personal pain point. I want to have an AI therapist, which is really cool.
Yeah. It was definitely personal for me. I think I'm generally frustrated with tapping and typing, and I'm more of a voice person or like a caller. And I was like, man, like I really want to use these models, but doing it over text is just not it.
Let's get into voice AI.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe at its core, just break down what is Vapi. I guess I should have given you a quick overview. A lot of the guests are aspiring founders or looking to work at AI companies. Not everyone's technical, so maybe you can also break it down from both sides.
Yeah, the easy way to think about it is when I was trying to build this AI therapist, there's a lot I needed to do and a lot of stuff I needed to wrangle to make these models actually work for my AI therapy application. There's like coordinating all these models to talk. There's like turn taking. There's like background noise cancellation. There's like telephony hookups. There's like tool call integrations. And that's kind of where the company started is, okay, make it possible for someone like me to build this AI therapist application. And then we started seeing these other startups that were building like AI role play and then like AI customer service and then AI like whatever. And the surface area for getting models to work as voice products in production kept growing as we kept supporting more use cases. And so today we are like the end-to-end platform to go from model to production. And then once it's in production, okay, how do we actually know the agent's doing what it's supposed to do with evals and testing and observability? And it's kind of just like everything you need to build a voice product is the way to think about it.
Now, a quick word from our sponsor. Laura and I are thrilled to announce a partnership with Grata, an intuitive deal sourcing and diligence platform. Keep missing out on private market deals? Ditch the Rolodex and get Grata. Grata's AI-powered platform provides accurate data, deep insights, and time-saving workflows that help get more deals done. And it's trusted by over 500 firms and 3,000 deal makers, including myself. I've personally used Grata in both my deal sourcing and diligence workflows and would recommend their tool to any investor across private equity, growth equity, corp dev, or investment banking. We've negotiated a special offer for our audience. Mention PartnerPath to the Grata team during sign-up, and you'll get free executive seats for your partners and MDs included in your subscription. Now, back to the episode.
Okay, so when a customer comes to you, what is their pain point and how are they using Vapi?
It's different. I mean, the market still is pretty early. So folks come to us at different points in what we call like the voice AI maturity spectrum, or whatever you want to call it. Some folks are like, oh, we have a voice product on our roadmap in like 4 months. We haven't even looked at anything. We have no idea how this works. We heard about you guys. And so for them, what we're providing is essentially a faster path to get to production, where they don't have to worry about all the shit that we had to build. They don't have to worry about scaling real-time infrastructure. They don't have to worry about like all the features and integrations and stuff on top. So it's mostly engineering time to market and effort saved and headcount, because really like even just running the infrastructure itself, like the actual like distributed system, that takes a team of like 5 to do like reliably, not to mention all the product built on top. So that's what we provide. And then for folks who are later in the maturity spectrum, that they've already tried something, they try to build it in-house, it's usually like we can swap it out and then increase their reliability or their conversion or some other latency metric. Yeah.
For customers who have tried to build it themselves, what's one of the most common things that helps them realize? It sounds like it's probably headcount or the infrastructure management, but are there any unexpected or things that people often say that as an operator building in this space, but maybe they thought wouldn't be that hard?
Yeah, there's kind of like different stages people go through. First thing people struggle with is latency optimization. So they're like, okay, I have these different models. Now I want to chain them together and I want to run them super fast. And we want to run them fast so that by the time I finish my statement, the AI responds before I have time to think, because then that breaks conversational flow if someone thinks between statements. So that's usually the first piece. And then trying to wrangle all of these models that won't sign latency SLAs with you, like OpenAI won't sign latency SLA. Nobody will really. Getting that all to work. Like we, for example, have to run a cluster of like 40 different LLM deployments for every model flavor so that we can balance the latency from one model to another. I actually wrote a post about this a couple of days ago on LinkedIn. You can check out. And so latency is the first problem. Once you have this thing and now it like talks, you're like, okay, great. Now it has to like do stuff. And then comes hooking up like tool calls and determinism and multi-state like prompt workflows to make sure it actually does what it's supposed to do. And that's I would say like behavior is the next thing you run into. Now you have an agent, it talks, it behaves the way you want it to, and it's like, okay, what's the next hurdle? Now you have to scale that shit to like tens of thousands of calls. And doing that is like really, really hard and requires like a specialized team. And the problem is when you start this journey, you go in thinking, oh, it's just models. Mm-hmm. But then as time goes on and you make the engineering investment, now it's like, okay, well, to continue this project, we need to double the team. So this project, we need to double the team again. And it just keeps growing in scope until people realize it's too late. And a year ago, people were doing this a lot more often before they knew vendors like us existed and before we knew what the value we provided was. But nowadays, I think like engineering teams are a lot smarter to know the scope.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. It sounds very challenging, but it's awesome that you guys help solve that problem.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I feel like compared to this agent integration space right now, where some folks are being the Zapier out of the box, 1,000 integrations, let me help you plug and play. And then some are going a little bit deeper, maybe, I don't know, a segment or someone where it's like really focusing on going deep with certain integrations. Is it a fair comparison to say you're one side of the spectrum, or are you trying to do like both for customers?
That's an interesting analogy where you're saying you have these different tech platforms, but they're not like verticalizing per se, but they're more like specializing.
Breadth and depth almost. And I know that, to be fair, I know you guys have traction with certain verticals you saw on your website where there's more attention right now.
Totally. I think we definitely think ourselves as like the more horizontal layer. In our platform, we have maybe like 1,200 points of config. And anytime like someone comes in and like asks or wants to build something, we're like, okay, how can we like build this in a way that makes it repeatable for other people? And so we've always thought about it as something to build like multiple things on top of is pretty horizontal.
Does it get domain specific? Are there any areas where you're focused on? Healthcare, for example. Chelsea and I have spent some time there.
Yeah.
Just integrating with like EHRs and some of the manual platforms that they've been building for decades are super clunky, require a different technical expertise and integration.
Yeah, we actually actively, I guess, try not to. One, because we just get so much pull from like the general product layers. So but I mean, we have talked about it where we're like, okay, well, people need HIPAA compliance. Okay, let's build enough so that all these like healthcare startups can at least like use us. But do we want to build like prior authorization flows? It's like, it's always like a decision point between expanding the horizontal or starting to move vertical. I just don't think we have the capacity right now to think about that. And a lot of the verticalization is actually served by the startups that are built on top of us. Maybe some point in the future will come where like we have more capacity and we start building like little mini products on top of the platform. Kind of the analogy that we like to use is like AWS, for example. Like you have compute, and then you have like S3, and then you have all these abstractions. So I think eventually we can work up to abstractions to capture more value, but we're right now constrained on capacity.
You just shared that a lot of these vertical players or vertical voice applications are building on top of Vapi. Can you talk a little bit about, since you're that underlying infrastructure, what are you seeing? Are there thematic or industry concentrations? Are there use case concentration that you're seeing in particular verticals? What are you just learning from them?
As I kind of project out, every industry is going to kind of go through this sort of like voice product moment as humans kind of get more used to talking to devices like they're people, as consumer kind of catches up. But the early movers is definitely healthcare. I would say maybe the three are healthcare, fintech, and home services / like mobile workforces. Those three tend to either just have like a high volume of calls or an older population that they're serving, or they're just like more mobile and on the go. So in healthcare, we're seeing a lot for like prior authorization. Home services, it's like, booking appointments and interviews and that kind of thing. Financial services is definitely more like customer service and that kind of stuff. So
there. Yeah. And more maybe on the horizontal angle, which is where you guys are more focused. What we hear talking to lots of voice developers, but also folks building and operating kind of voice AI startups, is the constant kind of statement of like, we're replacing BPO spend, we're replacing the call center, which I can imagine is positioning that also you have as Vapi, even if you are more infrastructure focused. Yeah. What is your take on that positioning and how folks are leveraging your tool?
I think it was a big question mark for us going into this space. At what point we were going to turn into like AI BPO or something like that. We have actively decided not to, because I think being an AI BPO requires you to build the DNA to serve a non-technical customer. Every time that we have tried to do an enterprise sale to a customer who does not have an engineering team, we have failed the deployment because we don't know how to set expectations with them. We don't know how to talk to them. We don't know how to like iterate like with them, and our product's way too complicated. And their expectations are like, it will never break and all sorts of stuff. And, I think companies like Decagon and Sierra are just better suited to like serve that market and have enough of a head start where I think us doing it as a side bet, if I'm going to fight an enterprise, I want to win the market. And I don't think that that's in our DNA to win that.
Something that also they talk about as well as enterprises is just like being scared of hallucinations.
Yeah.
If I put this in front of customers, will this work? And not everyone's testing in the pre-production environments. So how do you help with that testing set and honestly just getting folks comfortable being like, yeah, I want to deploy Vapi to take on 100% of my call volume?
Yeah, I mean, the great part about working with technical teams is it's not my problem. It's they're the experts in like deploying these things and prompting these things, and they spend all day tuning these things for their specific use case, and I don't have to deal with that. What I do have to do is build all the tooling that they need to do that process better than they did before. So that means like evals and like observability and like testing before things like go live whenever you're making changes, deterministic call flows, like the things that make it so that prompting is not as necessary. So that's where I think like we actually provide like durable value over time, if that makes sense.
Do you see folks hiring prompt engineers nowadays?
No, there was a phase.
Okay.
There was a phase probably a year and a half ago where like we would sometimes interface with like a prompt engineering specialist or something, but that's not really a thing anymore.
Really? Why do you think that is?
I don't think it's that specialized of a skill, especially when every engineer is vibe coding anyways.
And every non-engineer is vibe coding.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Exactly.
Don't take us out of this group.
Yeah.
Actually, talking about talent, we saw a ton of prompt engineers last year, but it does feel this year the role du jour is I'm a forward deployed engineer, and forward deployed engineers are everywhere. They've obviously been around from Palantir and other companies. But do you guys have a model where you have forward deployed engineers? What role does that play at all in how you think about building?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a reason the forward deployed model is really popular nowadays. What we're seeing from a lot of AI companies is when they serve in the enterprise, what they're providing is like almost always like a very like tailor-made solution to then replace like these internal like business processes or workflows. And so they kind of build this sort of flexible platform like we have, and then they have these people on top that can then tune it and turn the dials to make it so it actually like fit the business process. But with generative specifically, it's not a one size fits all. It's always a indeterminate system that needs constant tuning. And so because of that, you need someone who's like watching that tuning. That's why we decided to build a forward deployed model. Our team is, I think, 5 or 6 now. They're all like full software engineers. We actually have seen some companies doing like kind of half software engineers, like IT sort of people for forward deployed. But our opinion was these deployments are super complicated. They're building even like custom features and stuff. So like they should just be like from our engineering team and proper engineers. So that's what we staffed it with. Other than that, it is, I would say, a bottleneck to the team and to the overall company right now. But luckily, since we serve more technical customers, a lot of the work is done by the team on the other end. So for a not technical team, we can probably handle maybe like 1 or 2 active deployments per head. With a technical team, we can handle like 5 to 10. And so for us, it's like way more scalable than your average forward deployed motion.
Are there any tips or tricks for folks looking to hire or run that model correctly? Because even Chelsea and new startups we're chatting with, outside of the voice AI, a lot of people are really excited about this FDE model and they want to run it. But I think folks are trying to figure out like, how do I run it properly? Because there's not really a right way to do it right now or the standard playbook. And I know it's early for you as well, but if there was anything, or maybe even stumbles where you're like, oh, we tried this and it didn't work, so we like pivoted our strategy this way. And I'm sure a lot of it comes down to SLAs.
Actually, what we found in terms of like SLAs is like we'll put stuff in the contract, but people basically they're satisfied or they're not. And what we do is our process is like we have like a kickoff with a customer where we kind of understand all of their business requirements before we go into an engagement with them. So we already know and are aligned that, you know, we are going to be able to, like our engineering team has signed off that we think we're confident, their team knows what to expect, and then we enter that engagement with like a proper idea. So that exercise alone has been enough for us to stamp out a lot of ambiguity. In the actual engagement, we do like weekly check-ins, kind of just set the expectation that they can kind of throw whatever they want at us. But of course, because we're serving technical customers, what they throw at us is like less than what like a non-technical customer would throw at you. So our secret is that we pivoted to serving very technical teams.
Okay, everyone listening.
Yeah.
Serve technical teams only.
If possible, yeah.
And keeping on the theme of talent, you obviously and team went to Waterloo. Have you recruited out of Waterloo? Where have you found kind of talent density?
The problem with Waterloo is they all went to big tech and got paid $500,000 a year. That's the problem. So they're impossible to
That's hard to compete with.
Yeah, yes. that is difficult. The AI talent wars are real. Yeah. But so it sounds like you've been able to find other pockets of talent to bring into Vapi.
Yeah, I think the YC startup ecosystem has been great. I would say like a good chunk of our team is like previous founders. So that's been helpful. Other than that, honestly, like when the team was maybe like 8 and we finally raised our Series A, it was my job to go out and like recruit. So I actually, my strategy was like, I'm just going to spam and bring on 12 recruiting agencies. And then I just did that. And then our team went from like 10 to 30 in like 4 to 6 months. And that worked decently well. Eventually we did bring on like a internal recruiter because it's way cheaper and more efficient to do it that way. But that's roughly how we've managed so far.
Yeah.
How do you evaluate talent at that pace?
The number one thing that we learned to screen for decently early on, maybe like 25% through our hiring blast, was if you filter first for motivation, that actually makes everything else much, much easier. Because the problem is you're going to spend a ton of time trying to hire folks who make it through the second interview, third interview, fourth interview, maybe even like pilot them or bring them on. And then you figure out they're just not motivated. And what I found is like we had a 90% drop-off rate from our motivation screen from the first call. And the motivation screen is very simple. It's like, what's the number one thing motivating you in life right now? And then we just ask that question and just keep asking that question until they give us something that's like real. And something real is like, oh, I need to make my dad proud and he was never proud of me. Or like,
It's deep.
Yeah, or like my startup failed and I spent 5 years of my life on it and I need to feel a win. Or like, I just want to fucking win. I don't know why it's in my blood. Like these things are like great. It's way better than the answer that's like, I don't know, I thought this would be cool. Or like, I've been so curious about AI, or like, like those, they're completely different personas of people. And I want the viscerally motivated people because they're cracked. If they have that at like a 9 out of 10 and they have technical skills at like a 7 or 8 out of 10, I'll take that person anyways because they'll ramp faster than anyone else. So,
do you care about the voice AI background or any expertise there?
No, I think it's still so early. Actually, the pool of people who have expertise with voice AI is like extremely slim. It's like literally only like 5 companies.
Speaking of those 5 companies, one of them I'm assuming is ElevenLabs. What does your relationship look like with one level below Vapi? Assuming you're not choosing to go down that route yet. So I'm assuming a partnership would probably be the best place to start.
It's a weird market. It's still like forming. And so you have a lot of like, you have like the model people, you have like the audio infrastructure people, you have the voice infrastructure people, and then you have like the application voice AI companies. They're all overlapping each other in weird ways. Like ElevenLabs is like TTS, but they're also now conversational, and they're also like various other like consumer products. OpenAI is also orchestration, and like some of these application layer products have APIs, and so it's all over the place, roughly. Our relationship is, at least with the model vendors, is we're just going to use your TTS, and we're just going to try to build something that is just like more feature complete than what a team that's focused on multiple things can provide. So it is like kind of like a frenemy relationship, I'd say, with those guys for the most part.
Do you notice from your customer standpoint, do they have any preferences for particular models or vendors, or any trends you notice there?
Yeah, ElevenLabs, very popular. I think their brand from the very start has had them like dominate on our platform. We also have like Cartesia has now picked up steam. Obviously, Play AI was acquired recently, but they had steam on the platform, especially early on. I don't know what happened to them after, but so yeah, Cartesia and ElevenLabs right now are kind of leading.
We talked a little bit about the frenemy relationship with the model providers, audio infra, but there's also this ecosystem of voice applications, some of which you already described in the Sierras and the Decagons. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more? How do you perceive those folks in the market? Are they competitors in your opinion, or are they more, again, serving a part of the market you just you're not serving it?
If you look at like a Bland or like a retail now, like they are generally like, we rarely even like compete with them nowadays, given our focus on like technical buyers. I think we just sell to like a different like customer need for the most part. And in that same vein, all of the verticalized companies that are building on top of us, we are not competing with them. I can't think of one that we've directly competed with because, again, like the buyer we're selling to needs like a solution. We are not a solution. We are a infrastructure or like platform, if that makes sense. And so we kind of carved out this like nice little area for ourselves.
What I'm taking from your comments, though, is you think this market is massive and it's large enough for and Sierra, Decagon, there is space for.
Yeah, and I mean, much of the market, at least on the technical side, like does not exist. Like we are like so early in the curve right now that we're hearing about new companies that are looking at building voice products that we would never think. I can't mention who specifically, but like some large Fortune 500s who are looking to build voice products, like the random tech companies, random lifestyle companies. That is actually even like before the generative voice has even entered consumer. Our obvious expectation is that the second that Apple gets their shit together and starts deploying voice agents on everyone's device, like natively, that's going to start opening up everyone's mind to like building voice products and deploying voice. So we're not even there yet.
That's a good question. If we're sitting here in 10 years, what does the voice space look like? Or am I texting anymore? Or am I just talking?
The space itself, I have no idea. The what voice like looks like every day, I would say probably 70-80% of what you'll do every day will be via voice. It's just a much more natural mode of communication. We unfortunately, because of the constraints of technology, have been constrained to like boxes and tapping on things that like bucket our intents. We will be approaching a world where it is like completely unconstrained and bidirectional, 100%, without a doubt. If the future is not like that, it's like, what are we building for? Why would I want a world where anytime I have to use my phone or interact with this like beautiful technology, it takes away from like human experience? I would like for technology experiences to feel human, just like we are right now.
Yeah, I see us moving towards that world.
100%.
You're so close to the innovation and what's happening. What do you think is one of the biggest hurdles to getting us to that future? Or several? I'm sure there's several.
Distribution is big, and then like actual like enterprise integration is probably the two biggest things. So distribution, I'm more talking on consumer. Essentially, you cannot truly launch voice as mainstream unless you own the end consumer hardware. If you own the end consumer hardware, you actually have the control to leave the microphone on and have it always listening all the time. And you have the ability to run a local model that people are comfortable with, like having, running and processing like your actual audio data. And so it takes an Apple or a Google to make a big bet and roll this out. And unfortunately, because of the organizational issues at Apple, they've been unable to like weave together all of their services into like a unified like voice assistant that actually works. And so it's slowed down progress considerably. So that's one of the hurdles. On the enterprise side, which is likely going to be much slower than the consumer, which is already slow. It's purely just like, how do we get this thing in every nook and cranny of like your business workflow? So when I call into United, how do I actually like pull up the person's like customer file in a way that's like auth safe, that is on-prem, and like all these like last mile things, the last mile schlep. So anything that a human on the back end usually interacts with to let customers interact with like the business through like the call center, that needs to be like remapped, and that remapping will take time.
One other thing that we have also talked throughout this conversation, but we think about a lot, is the two architectures today on building voice agents. You already alluded to it before, that you're stitching together or chaining various components, but there's also all of this chatter around speech to speech. What is the future of speech to speech? You've already said things like integrations are a set of really large challenges that even if the models get better, you're not going to get over the fact that how do I get my data to United? But what do you think about this next frontier as we get closer to speech models being more widely available and more economical?
We've been waiting a long time. When we started the company around 2 years ago, probably 6 months in, we were like, I know what we're going to do. We're going to build the continuous inference, like speech-to-speech model. No one else is thinking about this. And then like 8 months later, of course, like fucking OpenAI comes out with it. It's definitely been on our minds for a while, and it's definitely necessary to hitting like full duplex, like human performance. We're seeing some early signs of it with the real-time API, with Gemini Live, and all these things that are coming out. Of course, they're still not fully duplex speech-to-speech. They're kind of just like a chunk of audio into a model, a chunk of audio out of a model. You still have a separate like turn-taking model. So it doesn't feel like fully fluid, but it's better. It at least emotes. The problem with those models right now, at least, is they don't have configuration, they don't have reliability. So you do not have the ability to like set a custom voice or custom speed or custom pronunciation or like whatever it might be that all these other cascaded individual parts have had the time to develop the configuration around. The second part is reliability. They're just not there yet. I would expect maybe like speech-to-speech, maybe like 0.1% of traffic on our platform right now. I would expect maybe end of year 10%, maybe end of next year, maybe 50. And so it's definitely going to take some time. But when it happens, we're going to see all sorts of new problems that need to be solved to get that type of model architecture to production. Like, how do you know it's not going to start like screaming at people? How do you QA audio versus like the text domain? In and out of a LLM, we've had a lot of time to develop that, but over audio, it's going to be a whole bunch of new challenges that come out. So
I didn't think about that, but I definitely don't want it to be yelled at by an AI
It happens.
agent.
They sing or they mock you,
or humans,
or they like and so it's freaky, right? And it's a ton of risk for these enterprise companies to deploy these things that can make sounds at humans.
Do you want to end with a quick fire round?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. What's your favorite non-technical AI product?
Whisper Flow, actually. I use that a lot.
Great
Yeah.
product. I'm obsessed.
Yeah, it's so good.
Yeah,
It's so good.
amazing.
Whisper Flow, the whole easy dictation was just such an interesting. We'll see where they go in all these companies.
One thing I always am struggling with, not just with Whisperflow, but when I think about the future where I'm only talking to my device, I'm like, is the world just going to be noisy? I know that's a silly idea, but when I'm in the office, for example, I use my Whisperflow less because we have an open floor plan.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to think about when I use it, what's the use case, and maybe we just get to a state of human interaction where we all know we're just engaging with our devices. But anyway, I don't know if you have ever been in like a more public space and whether it inhibits you using it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is going to inhibit people like using voice. I mean, this is why I said 70% voice, because 30% is like people are gonna be like, what are you doing? What I have seen demos of that were surprisingly accurate is like lip, like mouth just moving.
Oh, interesting.
That actually that can itself be transcribed either like on the earpiece or via like visual.
That's
so there
cool.
is that could be quite interesting. But our office is definitely, you just hear people like talking like, what? And you're like, no, I'm talking to my laptop.
I like the dubbing tools that translate the movies in Spanish to English, but it somewhat mimics the mouth. It drives me crazy when it doesn't mimic the mouth and you're trying to watch this movie. What's a dream customer to work with?
Ooh. I would say Airbnb. I would love to work with Airbnb. They're great. Travel company, they probably have a ton of like phone calls. They're super technical and like, they built their own internal like notification system, right? Instead of using like off the shelf stuff. Like these guys are like hardcore. I would love to my product to be at the bar that their team would adopt it.
Do you have a hot take on the current wave of voice agents?
I think speech to speech is going to take a long time. I think people have been excited I've been at this now for like 2 years since the start. It's going to take longer than we think. Probably like 2 years, really. Obviously, like our take is like the technical way is the way to go. So
fair enough. What's still missing from most agent stacks?
Evals. Yeah. Nobody has evals. Every single, because evals are like so complicated, especially if you're thinking about like state machines and state trees. It's like, how do you even eval like each step of this tree? Like what is, I could get into a philosophical discussion, but I won't.
For the next episode?
Yeah, sure.
That's all. Thank you, Jordan.
Cool. That was a quick fire. Rapid fire.
That was fun.
Yeah. Thanks so much.
That was awesome.